And welcome to the Incanthera Plc 2024 Annual General Meeting. Throughout this recorded meeting, attendees will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and they can be submitted at any time using the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Simply type in your questions and press send. I would now like to hand you over to Chairman Tim McCarthy. Good morning to you.
Thank you, Alex. Good morning to everyone here in the room with me. It's really great to see some shareholders face to face for once, and a very warm welcome to everyone that's joining us on Investor Meet Company. I'd seen some of the registrations before we started today, and there seems to be a very good attendance. So thank you all for taking the time out. So just to introduce myself, I'm Tim McCarthy, Chair of the company, and I'm going to introduce, before we get started formally, people who are sat either side of me. So if I go to my left, your right. So Laura Brogden, who's our CFO, Simon Ward, who's our CEO, Suzanne Brox, who's our Company Secretary and Head of Communications, John Howes, who's our Senior Independent Non-Executive Director, and we have one of the Non-Executive Director, Caroline Murray, who unfortunately cannot join us today because she has a diary clash. So it's a little bit unfortunate because I know she wanted to be here. So looking at the people in the room, we definitely have a quorum for the meeting, so we can go ahead. And the way we're going to run the meeting is nothing of any surprise to any of you, I'm sure, but we have the formal AGM to run through the resolutions, and the way we'll run that is I will read each resolution out, and I will ask for votes in the room by show of hands of anybody who's registered shareholder. And once we have that result, I will then declare whether the resolution is passed or not. And then I will read out the proxy votes, which we've received for each resolution as well, just to put it all into context. To follow that, we will go then into general Q&A, and I call it general Q&A because right now I'm going to ask, is there any particular questions in the room on the resolutions themselves? Because if there's any confusion or you want an explanation on the resolutions before you vote here today, let me put that out to the room first to see if there's any questions on those. Yes, Barry.
Yes, Tim, I was interested in some clarification about the partners of the securities involved in resolutions 5 and 6.
Yeah.
On the sort of basis. I don't know if I missed something, what was sent around to explain that.
Do you know, as a chair of an AGM, I always dread that question. Because these no, not at all, not at all. And just to share a little something with you, I actually rang a corporate lawyer the other day, Nigel Brown from Gately, to say, Nigel, just run through these numbers again for me. I know what all the numbers are, don't get me wrong, but just where they fit in the Companies Act and everything else. It's the one question which is, I think, the most asked question for explanations at AGMs that I chair, I must admit. So let me see if I can run through them for you and for the benefit of everybody else. So this is broken into two resolutions in a sense, which are connected. So resolutions 1 to 5 are all ordinary resolutions, so they require 50% or more of the votes to be approved. Resolution 6 is a special resolution that requires 75% or more of those voting to be approved. And the ones you're referring to are Resolution 5, which is broken into 5.1, 5.2, and Resolution 6, the special resolution. And they're actually quite wordy. So when I get to read them out, you'll have to have patience with me because it's going to take me a while, and you're going to see the top of my head as I sort of look at my script here. But just to try and put it into context, these two resolutions in a general sense are firstly to give the board of directors the permission to issue shares up to a certain percentages, which I'll come back to in a moment. And they would be issued under those general authorities that we're receiving here for issues of shares on a preemptive basis. And what I mean by that is that all current shareholders at the time of those issues would be given the opportunity, for example, if we were issuing shares to raise money for cash, they would be given the opportunity to subscribe in their particular proportions. So that if you own 1%, you have the opportunity to subscribe for 1%. That's the resolutions in 5.1 and 5.2, and I'll come back to the numbers in a moment. The resolution 6, the special, is what we call the disapplication of preemption rights. So on the basis that we've got the general authority given to us under resolution 5, under resolution 6, there is then the ability, if that is approved also, for the board of directors to issue shares non-preemptively, what we call a disapplication preemption provisions. So again, in the example I gave, we were raising money, we wouldn't be obliged to go to current shareholders to give them their proportion. Now, in reality, if we, as we have done actually this past year, when we've raised money, we've clearly gone to our shareholders first to say, would you like to participate? But then we've also taken the opportunity to bring some new institutional shareholders on board, more than anything else, which has strengthened the shareholder base. So it's a very useful instrument to have, if I can use that word, because we can be fair to current shareholders so they have the opportunity to participate, but we can also, in my words, strengthen the shareholder base, by bringing new institutional shareholders in, which is exactly what we've done this year. So that's the general explanation. The numbers themselves in 5.1 is equivalent to a third of the issued share capital. So we have 160 million, roughly speaking, without going into the exact numbers, 160 million shares in issue at the moment. And the numbers that you see quoted here is the nominal value. So don't get confused with number of shares and the nominal value. So we have 2p shares. So if you take a third of 116 and multiply that by 2p, you get to your 779,000. Yeah. The one in 5.2 is 2/3. So generally speaking, in companies traditionally have gone for this general authority under 5.1 for a third. During the COVID pandemic, when everything was closed down and there was a need for companies to be funded, the rules were relaxed. And 5.2 reflects that under this we have authority to go up to 2/3 in total. Yeah, so we can't add the third and the 2/3. So it's 2/3 in total, less obviously what we may or may not have used under 5.1, and that still remains in place. So that's why you'll see this is quite a common resolution for most companies. We're not out of step here with anybody else. And then Resolution 6 is, as I explained before, the disapplication, and we have got the authority to issue shares under Resolution 5, but that's on a preemptive basis. On Resolution 6, we are applying to approve for shareholders here in this AGM to get 20% of the issued share capital we can issue on a non-preemptive basis. And again, back to the numbers, the 467,000 is representing the nominal value of 20% of the shares in issue times your 2p. Yeah. That was a very long explanation. I'm really sorry, but it's not easy to explain that in one sentence. These are nominal values, and that is actually what sort of a lot of people don't understand, because you talk about percentages and they say we've got 116 million shares in issue, so that times a third or that times 20%, it doesn't equal that number. But you've got to express it as a nominal value, which in our case is 2p. Yeah.
Just before we continue, I had a message from Investor Meet the platform to say that those dialing in online couldn't hear the questions. So to add to your pain, they can hear the answers.
Thank you, Suzanne. It's just in the back row. It was hard to hear. Thank you.
Right. Okay. Would you like us just to repeat what that question was for clarity?
That'd be great. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad I don't have to repeat the answer.
That's the better of the two, right? So
no, the question that the gentleman in the audience asked was, can I explain the meaning of resolutions 5 and 6, which are, as I obviously just explained, and more personally to explain where we got the numbers from. And this is where a lot of people get confused between a percentage of the number of shares in issue versus a percentage of the shares in issue at their nominal value, which I've just explained. So I hope that squares off the circle, if that's the right expression for everybody. But I will remember what you just said there, because if we get more questions after the formal AGM, then I'll remember to repeat the question. So are there any other questions on the resolutions?
Could I just, it's a sort of follow-up to what you've just said, Simon Shute, my name, by the way.
Yes.
I'm not quite sure why you would want to do they called it in Resolution 6.
Right, the disapplication.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, isn't our money as good as anybody else's?
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, absolutely. And just to repeat the question.
But if we don't subscribe, well, yes, that's it. We've made the choice.
Yeah. So let me just repeat the question in case anybody couldn't hear it on the platform. So the question was a follow-up to Resolution 6 and the fact that we're applying for 20% disapplication, which means, in theory, we don't have to go to current shareholders for, if we're raising money, for example, to give them the opportunity. I think, as I intimated in the more general answer to Simon's point, that in reality, we do try the best we can to, as we've demonstrated in a couple of fundraising we've done already this year or over the past 12 months, that we do actually try to go to current shareholders, because one, their current shareholders have been supporting us all the way through, and they, it's only fair they should have the opportunity to participate. But it also gives the flexibility to the board that, say, for example, there isn't enough demand from current shareholders for whatever reason, but we are still in a position where we need to raise money, and we have investors that are ready and able to invest, that we're able to do that in an efficient way without having to call for general meetings. Because if we don't have that Resolution 6, we're not issuing it in a preemptive way to all existing shareholders and nobody else, then we'd have to go for another approval. That means a general meeting and a notice period and everything that involves. And in the sense that one is raising money to put into the company and invest in whatever we're investing in at the time, you want that to be as efficient as possible. So that's the reason. And 20% for a small company like ourselves is seen to be the sort of reasonable normal level. That's how it works. Okay.
Can I just ask one final
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Because in the recent past, we've heard we didn't think there would be any need for further financing because of the strong cash flow that you expect the launch of products with Mariner. I mean, does that in any way change, or is this just really just so you have the flexibility for unforeseen future scenarios?
Yeah. So the follow-up question from Barry was, we have said quite clearly that we have enough cash. We don't intend to raise more cash because we're anticipating revenues and everything that we said before, and that is absolutely still the case, Barry. But you will find that certainly for small companies, in every AGM, we always will renew that authority to have a disapplication. And as I said before, it's generally set at about the 20% level. It's not any signal to anybody, and let me make that absolutely clear. It's not any signal to anybody that we're about to raise money, or in fact we have an intention to raise money, because we don't. But to the last part of your question, are you putting it in place just in case something untoward happens? That is the reason all companies put it in place. Absolutely. Yeah. No problem. Okay. Any more questions specifically on the resolutions? No. So just to be absolutely clear, so we've answered questions on the resolutions. I'm going in a moment. I'm going to go through the formal business of the AGM and read the resolutions, ask for votes in the room, and then, as I said before, read out the proxy votes. And then when we come to the formal end of the AGM, we'll formally close the AGM meeting, but we'll stay here and we'll stay online, because then there's the opportunity to ask what I call general questions, which are not related specifically to the resolutions. And we have all of you in the room that can ask questions as you just have on the resolutions. And we have a laptop in front of us that Simon is hopefully going to help me drive. And we already have from the IMC platform some questions that have been put in already over the last few days. And you will all have the opportunity through your link in, if you're listening on IMC, to ask questions through the link. And they'll just pop up on our screen here. So when we are dealing with the general questions, we'll be able to answer those that come from the room, and we'll be able to look on the screen here, and as long as Simon knows his first gear from his second gear and driving it, and we'll be able to answer them for you. And we'll try and answer them, in as full a way as we can. Okay, quite a pre-intro into the AGM, wasn't it?
Take a breath, take some water.
Okay, let's get started. So we have formally opened the meeting. We've got the quorum, and I'm going to run through the resolutions. The first few resolutions are fairly short, so that's not too much of a bother. But as I said before, please bear with me when I read resolutions 5 and 6 out. They're fairly wordy, but at least hopefully we all understand what they mean now. So I'm going to go to resolution 1 first. It's an ordinary resolution for the company to receive the company's annual report and accounts, which is this little thing here, which I'm sure you've all seen or downloaded at some point. The company's annual report and accounts for the financial year ending 31st of March 2024, together with the reports of the directors and auditors of the company. So for those of us in the room who are shareholders, I'd just like to ask if you could raise your hand for all of those who are voting for that resolution. And anybody against? And any abstentions? That's pretty unanimous. So that resolution is passed. Let me just read out the proxy votes. So we've received proxy votes in respect to this resolution in for or in favour, 57,703,172 and none against. And so just to put that in context, that's important. Just a reminder, we have 160 million shares in issue, which I think I mentioned in the preamble. So 57 million is approximately half, which is a really good result, to get that level of shareholder voting and obviously supporting these resolutions is, I thank everybody that has put their proxy votes in and made the effort to vote. It's really pleasing to see for a small company like ours. Resolution 2 is an ordinary resolution to elect John Howes, who I introduced earlier on my right, your left. Who was appointed during the year, and as you may be aware, when a director is appointed by the board between AGMs, then that director has to be re-elected essentially by shareholders at the next AGM, and that's where we are with John today. So you were appointed during the year under Article 23.4.2. I bet you didn't know that, John, did you? Of the Company's Articles of Association, and you are still eligible. And you're offering yourself for re-election. So can I just ask again the votes in the room for the in favour of John's re-election? I don't need to do this because I've done it before, but let me ask, is anybody against, because there's nobody left, and there's no abstentions. So that is passed unanimously, and welcome back to the board, John. Well, not welcome back, you didn't leave, but it's nice to have the confirmation. And the proxy votes in with that are exactly the same actually as resolution 1. So we have 57,703,172 votes in favour and none against. Resolution 3 is an ordinary resolution to re-elect Simon Ward. And just to explain this, Simon obviously wasn't appointed during the year, but in any public company like ourselves, all the directors on the board have to be re-elected in order, in roughly speaking, every 3 years, depending on the number of directors on the board. And it's Simon's sort of rotation this year to be re-elected. And that just means that shareholders do have an input, at least at this level, to, if they're not happy with a director or they want to make a point, that we have to go back every now and again to get that approved. So I'm sorry to say, Simon.
I'll go now, Sean.
So this is resolution 3 and you're similarly under Article 23.4.2 of the Articles of Association, and you're offering yourself up for election. So again, can I have a show of hands in favour of Simon's re-election? That's unanimous again. So obviously nothing against and no abstentions because no more hands to raise. So that is being passed and you're back on the board, Simon. And again, the numbers are exactly the same on the proxy votes, 57,703,172 votes in favour and none against. So resolution 4 is an ordinary resolution to appoint Crowe LLP as auditors of the company until the next AGM of the company and to authorise the directors to determine their remuneration. So again, if I can just ask for those in the room can raise their hands in favour of that resolution. Okay, unanimous again, so none against and no abstentions. And exactly the same again, getting a bit monotonous, I'm afraid. So the proxy votes, 57,703,172 votes in favour of the resolution and none against. So resolution 5, and this is where I'm going to have to read all through, just so I make sure I get it right. So this is the resolution 5, followed by resolution 6, the special, which is what we touched on earlier. So forgive me if I just read it through. So resolution 5 is an ordinary resolution that, in substitution for all existing and unexercised authorities and powers, the directors of the company to be generally and unconditionally authorised for the purpose of section 551 of the Companies Act 2006 to exercise, in 5.1, to exercise all or any of the powers of the company to allot shares of the company, or to grant rights to subscribe for, or to convert any security into shares of the company, those shares and rights being together referred to as relevant securities, up to a total nominal value of 779,307. And just to remind you, that's the number we talked about earlier, which is the nominal value, which represents 1/3 of the shares in issue, to those persons at the times and generally on the terms and conditions as the directors may determine, subject always to the Articles of Association of the company. And further, 5.2, to allot equity securities as defined in section 560 of the Act, up to a total nominal value of 1,558,614, and that represents 2/3, as we went through earlier. That amount to be reduced by the nominal value of any relevant securities allotted under the authority in paragraph 5.1 above. So this is where I was saying that you can't do any more than 2/3 if you've already done it under the first 5.1. I've lost my place here, sorry. That amount to be reduced by the nominal value of any relevant securities allotted in the authority in 5.1 above, in connection with a rights issue or similar offer in favour of ordinary shareholders, where the equity securities respectively attributable to the interests of all ordinary shareholders are proportionate, as nearly as may be, to the respective numbers of ordinary shares held by them, subject only to those exclusions or other arrangements as the directors of the company may consider appropriate. I'll take a breath in a moment, to deal with fractional entitlements or legal or practical difficulties under the laws of or the requirements of any recognised regulated body in any territory. Must be written by a lawyer, I think. So I'm going to go to the room as we have before. So if you could raise your hands for all in favour of resolution. Sorry. The provisional. Sorry. Fine, yes. You're absolutely right. I shortened it for my script, thinking I'd probably get away with it, Barry, but you caught me out. Provided that this authority shall, unless previously renewed, varied or revoked by the company in general meeting, expire at the conclusion of the next AGM or on the date which is 6 months after the next accounting reference date of the company, if earlier, save that the directors of the company may, before the expiry of that period, make an offer or agreement which would or might require relevant securities or equity securities, as the case may be, to be allotted after the expiry of that period, and the directors of the company may allot relevant securities or equity securities, as the case may be, under that offer or agreement, as if the authority conferred by that resolution had not expired. So let me just take the time out to explain that. What that means is that you go from one AGM to the next with these authorities, and if you don't use them, you lose them, so to speak. So we are now renewing these authorities from this date of this AGM to the date of the next AGM, and we can use them obviously in the manner that we've discussed and explained. And if there is a situation where, let's say, for example, we're coming up to the next AGM and we have agreed, signed off to issue shares, let's say under a fundraising or some other reason, but that isn't concluded until after the date of the next AGM, we can use the authority that we're given here today to conclude that, and that won't expire, so to speak, with the next AGM, if that's clear. Hopefully it's clear. And just to say that that particular paragraph, Barry, is exactly the same that comes on the end of resolution 6. So if you give me, I won't repeat it again because it's exactly the same. Thank you. So yes, I think we were asking for votes in the room. So if you can put your hands up, please, in favour of resolution 5. Again, that's unanimous, so none against, no abstentions. So that resolution is passed. And the proxy votes received on that, in favour 57,077,465. In favour 625,707 against the resolution. So that resolution has been passed. So now we come to the special resolution, resolution 6, again, which we talked about earlier. And just remind you, this requires 75% of those voting to get approval. So let me take a moment to read this, which is not quite as long as the last one, I don't think. Resolution 6 is a special resolution that if resolution 5 above is passed, which it just has been, the directors of the company be authorised to allot equity securities as defined in section 560 of the Act for cash under the authority given by that resolution 5, and or sell ordinary shares held by the company as treasury shares for cash, as if section 561 of the Act did not apply to that allotment or sale, the authority to be limited to 6.1, the allotment of equity securities or sale of treasury shares in connection with the rights issue or similar offer in favour of ordinary shareholders, where the equity securities, respectively, attributable to the interests of all ordinary shareholders as are proportionate, as nearly as may be, to the respective number of ordinary shares held by them, subject only to those exclusions or other arrangements as the directors of the company may consider appropriate to deal with fractional entitlements or legal and practical difficulties under the laws of or the requirements of any recognised regulatory body in any territory. And yes, that's it. And then 6.2, sorry, is the allotment of equity securities or sale of treasury shares otherwise than under paragraph 6.1 above, as I've just read, up to a total amount of nominal amount of 467,584. And just to remind you, that represents 20% of the shares in issue that we currently have. Yeah, so that's that. And then that last paragraph, Barry, that you reminded me, that is exactly the same in terms of the authority going from AGM to AGM. So I'm going to ask for the room again to raise your hands first in favour of that resolution 6. Yeah, yes.
Does that expire at the end of this year?
Okay.
By the next AGM.
Yeah. So the question, just for the people on IMC platform, is does that authority expire at the next AGM? The short answer to that is yes. The one proviso is it's the earlier of the next AGM or 6 months from our year end. Yeah. So our year end, Laura, is
31st of March.
Anyway, 31st of March. I knew that. Let's just make sure she was awake. So that means that if we don't have the next AGM before 30th of September, yeah, the resolutions, these authorities will expire on 30th September. So, but if we have the AGM next year, let's say 15th of September, then it will go to the next AGM. That's how it works. Yeah. So okay. Right. Did we do the votes?
No, we haven't done them.
We haven't done the votes, right? Okay.
Yeah.
I've got somebody to keep me in track.
We nearly got there.
All right. So let's if I can ask you all to put your hands up in favour of that resolution 6. Again, that's unanimous. So none against, no abstentions. So that has been passed. And the proxy votes in favour are 56,991,200 and against 711,972,000. So that has been passed, and we've passed obviously the 75% of those voting. That does conclude the formal business of the AGM. I'm quite glad, because I think I'm probably going to drink of water after all that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to open up to general Q&A. We have shareholders in the room here who I'm sure probably have some questions. Forgive me if Simon and I sort of keep looking at the screen here. We have seen the questions that came in prior, so we've got those to answer, and then we need to address any questions which are coming during the meeting. So what I'd like to do actually is what I've found previously with these situations is that some questions are repeated almost more than once, maybe in a slightly different way. So to make it efficient and to make sure we cover everything, we might look at some of the questions here and say, well, there's 2 or 3 that are very, very similar, so we'll phrase it in such a way that we get the answer that everybody's looking for. But it might be easier first just to ask anybody in the room if you have any general questions, and let's address those, and then we can go to the IMC questions. And we may already have answered some of those from the room. If not, then we'll address them as we see them. So firstly, let me go to the room. Have we got any questions from the room?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Simon.
Shall I go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
If this isn't an appropriate question, don't answer it.
Nicely framed.
We seem to have been dominated over the last year with Skin Plus Cell.
Mhm.
When I invested,
Mhm.
you seemed to be well on the way to finding a serious cure for cancer.
Mhm.
Are you still working on that?
Okay.
And if so, how are we getting on?
Okay.
Give your
Why
voice,
don't you
give your voice a
ever tell
break.
No, I just need to repeat the question.
Of
Simon.
course.
So the question from the audience here, from Simon, was when he invested in the company, it was very much about we're looking for treatments for cancer, and is that still there? Because what we've been talking about over the last 12 months is obviously Skin and Cell. So Simon has very kindly offered to answer. I was going to ask him to answer it anyway, but and I can have a little drink of water. Simon, over to you. And just to also say, we have had more than one question in a very similar vein on the IMC question. So
I'll try and pick
just
all of
sort of
those up,
pick them all up if you don't.
I'll do my best anyway. So.
Okay.
No, thank you for the question. It is actually a very pertinent question. We are an oncology company still, and we will remain so. We do have very active communication with Bradford still at the Institute of Cancer Therapeutics. Thank you. And we have the pipeline deal still in place as well, and we're monitoring what's going on there. So all of that is very much live. Clearly, they're all very early stage products, but it is very much alive. Our focus has shifted a little bit for commercial reasons, quite clearly. As a small company, we have to do those things. We have to look after your interests as shareholders. And possibly more pertinent to all of this, of course, is our skin cancer sort of opportunities that were coming out of the SOLVE program. So if you remember, we had a product that was there for the treatment of actinic keratosis, which we've actually got a trademark for now. So we call it Actino Pro. So it is moving forward. It is getting closer. That particular product obviously was for treating actinic keratosis. And I'm not going to go into the science in too much detail, but if you remember, that's the first sign of the skin actually starting to go wrong when you're exposed to UV radiation, particularly for a long time. So if you're out in the sun for a lot, we tend to get these actinic keratoses, these little inflammations on the skin. You've got them.
Yeah.
I'm preaching to the converted. Oh, your age. No, do you know, it's very interesting. We talk about that. We always used to think that skin cancer was really about age. It's all about exposure and length of exposure. But a lot of recent data has come up to show that there's a bit of a hike in the sort of the mid years, so 25 to 55. And it seems to be related to the ability now for us to travel more freely and to go on holidays and get into the sun. And there's also a little bit of miseducation. I don't want to get too political here, but there's also a little bit of miseducation about current sun creams, about slapping those on and you feel you're invincible to the sun's effects. Absolutely not. You'll stop burning, but are we really protecting ourselves from cancer? So there's a lot of things going on in modern life that is actually pulling that demography back, which is very scary, actually, to be honest. And there is a chance for those actinic keratoses, hopefully not yours, clearly, but actually progressing on into certain types of cancers of the skin. So in treating them, we can sort of then follow on and prevent these cancers. And we're still actively working on that. That is very much a pharmaceutical. It's a different formulation technology. It's a pharmaceutical. And as a pharmaceutical, of course, as your friend next to you, Alan, will definitely tell you, it's a much longer developmental timeline. And Alan, John, who are you? Sorry, I didn't realise I called you the wrong name. It's a much longer development timeline. But during that timeline, there are opportunities to talk to potential partners and push that forward, which we have been doing, and we've spoken about that previously. We've had a very exciting, for me anyway, sit down with an advisory board of dermatologists to look at how we can place this, properly and make the best out of it, and what their thoughts about that particular product are, where they see it in their sort of goodie bag of treatments. And that was very productive. And it's actually quite pertinent because we are at the moment planning for another sit down with a big company to discuss potentially partnering this particular project. So yes, it's all good. That was a very long-winded answer, wasn't it? I'm sorry, but it is still all going on in the background, yes.
It's all very interesting. I find it very interesting.
Good, thank you.
Ask you to say
Yeah,
more.
no.
Is that what it should be called? Sol?
Yeah, so the Sol.
Sorry, so you need to repeat the question. So I'm sorry. So the question was, is that what we used to call Sol, or do call Sol?
Yeah. So John, formerly known as Alan, yes. Sol, actually, I think people associate that particular product with the name Sol. That's true. We actually internally use Sol as a program for looking at technologies to move things in and through the skin. But at the time we launched that program, that was our only piece of technology. So it did get sort of confused with Sol. Yes, that is Sol as you know it. Yes.
Any more questions from?
So obviously, the skin and cell is the main thing we think there's driving at the moment. But there's also the anti-massacre agents from Bradford. There's the PS5 from Salford and others. Are they going to have a turn in the limelight someday?
We very much hope they will have a turn in the limelight. Okay, so John has said we have a number of other assets within the pipeline that we've taken from various universities, including Salford, which is close to your heart. Are they going to have their turn in the limelight? And yes, as a company, we definitely hope they will. It's all a matter of getting the right power behind them, getting the programs in place. As you know, these things take time and a lot of financing. But we hope very soon we'll be in a position to do that. So watch this space.
Yeah, very.
Are you able to say any more? You may not about the reasons why the launch changed from these 2 European markets to a later date, presumably, and a broader range of European markets. What was the sort of condition at the time you made that announcement of that change? You said anything about why that happened.
So the question was, can we say any more about the reasons why it changed from a launch in specific countries in Europe to a wider European launch, which was the subject of our last RNS we put out 2 or 3 weeks ago? Not really, if I'm honest. It's nothing to do with us, obviously. It's just a way that the company has decided that they want to move forward in terms of how they launch new products. So we said as much as we could, as we knew, frankly. So sorry. So I was just sort of linking me to another question on the IMC, which was linked. But no, we don't have any sort of other explanation than that. There's nothing sort of more than we can say. That's just a decision that they decided. It's nothing to do with skin and cell per se. It's just a general decision.
So it's nothing to do with the manufacturing of the stuff?
Well, no, actually, sorry, your follow-up was nothing to do with the manufacturing or anything. Well, I can answer that. There you go. And I don't know if anybody on the IMC platform can see that clearly, because it might be a little bit of distant, but there are some samples which have been manufactured by our contract manufacturer Freaka that I think we've talked about quite a lot in the past, and these are the different products in the range. Beautiful, this is top. I mean, I was saying to Simon last night, I said it has a really lovely click. You sort of push the top on the bottle and it's got a really nice click, and it's a beautiful bottle. I mean, this is the highest quality.
Key customer, clearly.
Sorry. This is the highest quality of this type of bottle and presentation that you can get, and that's what we've said to everybody we're producing, and that's what the attraction is. This product range. And I do hope that everyone on our IMC can get at least a feel, because obviously the people in the room can actually have a touch and play with them later. But to answer your question, that's the manufacturing, which has gone absolutely according to plan, all on time. We're absolutely delighted. I mean, that's down to the efforts of Simon and his team and liaising with the guys at Freaka. But I mean, we're absolutely delighted with that, Barry, to be honest. I mean, we couldn't wish for anything better.
Very high quality, very high quality product.
Yeah. No, sorry, your point was it looks a very high quality product for people on the platform. It is. I mean, it looks a high quality product, and more importantly, the formulation and the creams in there are of the highest quality, and everything we've talked about, being delivered to the user and the consumer. And there's a sort of connected. Well, actually, there's a few questions on IMC, which are connected in terms of, how do we envisage getting this out, and is there a conflict, or is there a flow through between getting this on the retail shelves in a store or shop versus online? And I think, Simon, we were talking about this last night, weren't we, with some of the pre-questions. You had a particular sort of thought on online versus shelves.
Yeah, the market, particularly for high end, people need to see a physical product. That the way that markets are going these days is clearly all online, and everybody just Googles what they want and buys it and has it delivered. But I think for things that have a real tangible effect, and topical creams are the definition of a tangible effect, people do like to come into a shop and try and see and sniff and play and get a good feel for it and go away with the samples before they move online. So I think it's really important that you have it in the right shops, in the right places, with the right sales teams behind it, so giving the correct messaging. And then you follow that up with online availability, of course, because that's where the volumes will come. So yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good point. And they are top quality. They're top quality in their manufacture, in the processes that have gone behind it, in ticking all the boxes for regulatory requirements, albeit for cosmetics, those are much less than pharmaceuticals, but they still exist. And for the markets we move into, we have that and more. So, it's a great product. Yeah.
And just to add, for anybody that can't see on the Investor Meet platform, I will take some images of these and I will post them. So if anybody can't actually see the quality of those bottles, we'll do that and we'll get those posted so that everybody can see that latest production line.
Okay. Thank you.
Simon,
again.
It's probably nothing to do with you. Will they be in duty-free outlets? Because that would seem to be
Eventually.
Sorry, let me just. Sorry, it's a bit awkward, but let me just. So Simon just asked, sort of followed in with it's probably nothing to do with us. However, will these be in duty-free shops in due course? Sorry, you were about to answer something.
I was. It's a really good question, and duty-free, it's almost another market in itself. They're only certain. Yeah, absolutely. So it's very difficult to say. We are looking at all markets, and we are exploring all territories for placing this product, and that will be with different partners, obviously. And one of those is to find partners who do have an ability to place the duty-free stores too.
Yeah. So there's question. Sorry, sort of similar-ish questions here on the IMC about concentration of customers, i.e., our customer, business customer, and it's a question for all companies really, because if you have just one single customer for your products, then you're exposed in so many different ways, and we've seen that. If we take an example, the UK and supermarkets, for example, tend to dominate, farmers and their supplies, and get into all sorts of problems without naming any particular supermarket here. But it leads on from Simon's answer just then that, we are very aware that we've got the world to go here. The world physically, in terms of getting the product on shelves in different markets, and I think we've said this before in presentations and things that we do have a number of other leads throughout the world, and then of course the online sales, and as you quite rightly say, you've then got duty free, which is another sort of way out to the market. So moving forward, we're very aware that we want to, in a sense, spread the risk, but also spread the opportunity. It's both sides of the coin, and it won't surprise you to know that we've been doing a little bit of work on that in the background, and so we do have some other opportunities which we can pursue at the right time, in the future. Because just to emphasise, this is our brand. This is a brand that we can sell worldwide. So that gives us the flexibility to go into these other markets. And as sort of, again, I'm trying to link some of these questions because one of the questions, or a few questions that come through on the IMC platform, is about extension of the range, and specifically there's a question about SPF factors being put into the range. And I'm definitely going to pass that over to the technical one next to me. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay.
That's you, Simon.
That's
if
me,
you
is it?
haven't
Sorry,
realised.
Laura. No, absolutely. So we are very much going to be bringing out a sun care range. It's in the pipeline. We want a range to include a pre, an inter, so a during sun, and a post sun product. Probably the biggest challenge there at the moment is the inter-sun product, getting a sun cream that has this sort of magic in it that we are applying to all of these concepts. And that's a formulation challenge. And we particularly want to go down the aerosol route because that seems to be an easy way and a very acceptable way of applying better sun cream, so you get even spreads and you get barrier formations and things like this. And we are working at the moment with a partner to develop exactly that. All I can say at the moment, unfortunately, it's going really well. So again, it's a bit of a watch this space, but very excited by that, actually, very excited by that.
There's a specific question here about payment terms, and can we confirm that when we supply skin and cell that we're paid when we deliver it? And I can confirm that that is the case. So that deals with that one, I think. And then I saw something down here. Forgive me for scrolling through, which I thought I'd ask Simon to answer. Yes. There's a question here. Are there any regulatory requirements for skin and cell to be tested in the markets that it's being launched in? I mean, I think that's a very straight answer to that. Isn't it?
Well, yes, I think I actually answered that previously. Yes, of course there are, and yes, we have.
Which, I mean, just to be clear, is different, so nobody gets confused. There's a different regulatory environment if you're developing and trying and selling a pharmaceutical product as opposed to this, which is a cosmetic. But there are still regulations, which we need to adhere to, which we do.
and to register in different territories, there are different regulatory hurdles. So we will meet all of those.
So there's a question here about pricing. Recognizing the product is a top-end product, and pricing, frankly, is still to be determined. But we are expecting that this will be priced, obviously, to reflect its quality, without being able at this point to put a specific number on it. So yes, we would expect that the pricing would reflect the quality of the product, but still be competitive, because that's a fine balance. These sort of what economists talk about, price elasticity. You want to pitch your product at a price point where it's attractive for somebody to buy, but it also sends the almost subliminal message that, well, if it's priced at that, it must be a quality product, and that must be then supported by the product itself. I'm just sorry. I'm running through the questions from the platform, which are coming in as we speak, and we have answered a lot of them already. If there's any more questions from the room, please do say. Oops. I think we've covered them, but I'm just going to run through once more. There's a lot of questions that have come through here, which are phrased slightly differently, but they're covering the same points, which we've already covered. Oops. Yeah. Any more questions from the room?
So I don't want to monopolise.
No, not at all.
I try.
This is your meeting.
What I think is a slightly different question.
Yes.
Are you expecting another big order now that the launch is wider?
I'm not in a position to answer that, to be honest. I mean, this is something which we will develop as we go through the next period. But as you can see, we've already geared ourselves up. So this is a case of depending on the demand, we will gear the manufacturing to that demand, and that's something which is we've got a fantastic partner in Freaker Manufacturing. They're one of, well, if not the world's leading, but one of the world's leading specialist manufacturers in this area of cosmetics, and without naming any names, they manufacture for all of the high-end cosmetic companies, all the sort of names that you would recognise, and they have fantastic capacity. They have more than enough capacity. They're running literally millions of bottles through their plant, and so capacity is not a problem, which is a question we're sometimes asked, because the rate of the expansion of sales in skin and cell, could be quite rapid, and that was one of the criteria in choosing Freaker, not only that we were absolutely certain of their quality and their experience, but also the capacity, and they told us quite specifically, do not worry about capacity. We have more than enough, and they have more than one plant, and so that's not an issue.
Just on that point, Tim, I mean, packaging itself is presumably provided by somebody else.
Okay. Right? The question was, the packaging is provided by somebody else. No, it's all done as part of our manufacturing process. So there's a box to go around that. Yeah.
All that though is
No. Sorry, I misunderstood the question. Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, no. So different components come from different places. They all come into Freaker where they are finally put into the final form and final packaging.
Sometimes the issue isn't the capacity of the plant to fill the containers, it's getting the containers.
Yeah.
Things like that. So
okay. So, yeah.
No, absolutely. Yeah. So again,
sorry. Recognizing what you're saying there, Barry, that it's not just the capacity, as I was saying about Freaker, it's the capacity or the availability of the different ingredients or components that are coming in to this, and that's a very good point.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and these particular bottles are clearly very special, and the manufacture of those is a process itself, and also interestingly, the delivery system is patented. So this comes from one specific place, and that's important to us because we wanted to ensure there was no oxygen, so no oxygenation, no oxidative issues with the creams, and these are all manufactured and produced by Lumsum, who are in Italy, one of the largest producers of these things. So. Yeah, we're very, very lucky to be with them, to be honest. They are exceptional.
But they don't have constraints either.
No, as much as anybody has constraints, there's always, yeah.
Okay. I'm just running through the questions again. They continue to come in. There are a few questions on here which we simply can't, we don't have the answers for, because it's understandably, people are asking questions. Can we give any more details and update on what we put out 2 or 3 weeks ago? And we can't, and we wouldn't do it in this forum anyway, because as and when there is an update on any of the details of the launch, then we, along with our advisors, we will put an RNS together and we would publish it so that it's available to everybody at the same time in the normal way. So I'm reaching out to everybody on IMC. Forgive us if we're not ignoring your questions on here, but there are some questions on here which we simply don't have the answer to, and we wouldn't be in a position to even speculate, especially when I've got my regulatory advisor sat here in the audience staring at me in a nice way. But no, I mean, as you will appreciate, we need to do this in the way that we have to do it, and as and when we have an update on any of the details which a number of the questions are referring to, then we will obviously put an RNS out together in conjunction with our advisors, and we will put it out. So I'm making that pretty clear, because I'm sure a number of you will say, well, you haven't answered my question, and I'm just making it clear why. I'm not ignoring them, but we have to do this in the proper way, and obviously put out those sort of new updates to everybody at the same time in the form of an RNS. Right. I'm hoping I haven't missed anything. I believe, well, I'm pretty sure, we've done IMC before, that these questions and the relevant answers will be put up onto the platform afterwards. So we'll go through that with the guys at IMC and make sure that we've answered those as in the best way we can. But I think for the moment, there aren't any more. I'm scrolling through. If I have inadvertently missed one or two and it's not relevant to an update on RNS, then we'll certainly answer it on the platform. But before we bring it to a close, is there any more questions from the room? No. Okay. Right. Yeah, there don't seem to be any more coming in on the platform. So I'd just like to say thank you very much. A big thank you for you guys turning up today, making the effort. It's always nice to see people face to face. I thank all my board around me for all your efforts during the year, and the team behind us that is not with us. You've all done an absolutely fabulous job. So thank you all very much, and to everyone behind us. We have two great guys from our regulatory team here, from Cairn. So thank you guys for all your help, and we have other advisors that couldn't make it today. So I'm reaching out to you. I know you'll probably listen on IMC, so you know who you are. Bob, Patrick, thank you very much, and to our legal team. And we're here in Gately's offices in Paternoster Square in London. And the team is led by the guys out of Manchester, actually, and I mentioned Nigel Brown earlier, and Rebecca, and all the guys there. So thank you for all your support during the year as well, and before, I'm sure, going into the future. So there's nothing else. There's no more questions coming in. I think we're done. So I need to technically somehow hand back to IMC, and I'm sure you're listening. So would you like to pick it up from here, guys?
Perfect, Tim, Simon, that's great. And thank you and the rest of the board for updating attendees online this morning. On behalf of the board of Incanthera Plc, we would like to thank you for attending today's annual general meeting, and good afternoon to you all.